In most stories about World War II, the camera follows the big things. Columns of tanks, waves of bombers, maps with arrows moving across continents. But if you shrink that camera down and look at the war from the height of one human eye, you discover a very different kind of battle. A war of patience, of breathing, of stillness. A war where a single person, lying motionless in the dirt, could shape the behavior of an entire unit that never even saw his face. This is the world of the sniper. And in World War II, snipers became something larger than just specialized soldiers. They became symbols. For some, they were symbols of terror, invisible killers hiding in windows, trees, and rubble, turning every open space into a possible death trap. For others, they were symbols of hope, proof that even when your side was outnumbered and pushed back, one calm set of hands and one steady trigger could still make a difference. That's the paradox we're going to explore. Why did snipers become symbols of fear and hope in World War II, not just tools of war? To understand this, you have to imagine what the war felt like on the ground. Most soldiers were not charging heroically all the time. They were waiting in trenches, waiting in foxholes, waiting in damaged buildings, waiting for orders, for artillery, for the next attack. War was long stretches of boredom and fear, interrupted by moments of chaos. And into that world, you insert the idea of a sniper, a single rifle somewhere out there, you don't know where. Someone patient enough to watch you for hours. Someone who might be looking at you right now, through glass and steel, while you tie your boot, light a cigarette, or stand up for a better view. Suddenly, nothing feels safe anymore. A road that seemed empty now feels like a trap. A doorway becomes a risk. A helmet above a trench line becomes a target. The sniper did not have to kill many soldiers to have this effect. Sometimes, one shot was enough to transform the mood of an entire sector. One officer dropped in the middle of an order. One radio man cut off mid-sentence. One runner collapsing with a message in his hand. Rumors would spread faster than facts. There's a sniper. Has been here all day. He never misses. Has hunting officers. It almost didn't matter if those details were true. What mattered was the mental pressure. Because snipers fought on two fronts at once. The physical battlefield and the psychological battlefield. Now flip the perspective. Imagine you're on the side that is being pushed back. Your cities are under attack. Your line has been broken again and again. Your army has taken massive losses. You don't have many tanks. You don't have enough planes. But you do have people who can lie still. You do have hunters, woodsmen, workers, young men and women who can learn to shoot, to wait, to disappear into snow and rubble. In that situation, the sniper becomes something else, a way to fight back, even when you cannot afford large-scale offensives. A way to remind the enemy that every advance will cost them something. A way to give your own people a story that sounds like this. We may be outgunned, we may be outnumbered, but we still have eyes in the ruins. We still have teeth. And that is where hope enters the picture. Because the sniper is not just a weapon. He, and sometimes she, becomes a character in the story a nation tells itself about survival. Posters, newspaper articles, radio broadcasts, stories of a single sniper holding a street, a factory, a hill. Stories of dozens, then hundreds of confirmed kills. Stories of duels between enemy snipers, like ghostly chess games played through shattered windows. Some of those stories were exaggerated. Some were simplified. Some turned into legends. But their purpose wasn't only to count kills. Their purpose was to say, look, even in the worst conditions, someone is still fighting. Someone is still out there, watching the enemy, making them pay for every step. 4 soldiers at the front that could make a difference. When you know there is a skilled sniper working on your side, covering your advance or your retreat. It doesn't erase the danger, but it adds a thin layer of reassurance. You're not completely blind. You're not completely exposed. Somewhere ahead, someone is already lying in the cold, scanning the world through glass, waiting for the right moment, So that's the paradox we're going to keep returning to. One sniper, two emotions. For the enemy, a symbol of fear. For your own side, a symbol of hope. And both of these emotions are amplified by the same thing. Invisibility. You rarely see the sniper. You see only the results. A man dropping suddenly. A helmet knocked off. A shot that seems to come from nowhere. That emptiness, that gap between cause and effect, becomes a space where imagination grows. Fear fills that space. So does myth. And World War II, with its shattered cities, endless forests, frozen fields, and chaotic front lines, was almost a perfect landscape for that kind of myth to spread. To see how powerful the image of the sniper became, you have to start with something very simple. He changes how other people move. Not with speeches, not with orders, with the possibility of one bullet. Imagine an infantry unit advancing through a village. On the map, it's just a grey shape with a name. On the ground, it's smashed houses, broken fences, empty windows, and shadows. Without snipers, the unit might move with a certain rhythm. Short dashes, quick checks of corners, a sense of danger. Yes, but also a sense of flow. Now introduce the rumor. There's a sniper in this village. Nothing else has changed physically. The ruins are the same. The streets are the same. But suddenly everything feels different. Helmets stay lower. Heads pop up less often. People hug walls, crawl more, wait longer. A simple crossing of an open street becomes a negotiation with fear. Who goes first? How fast do we sprint? Is it even worth it? Officers know that one shot can destroy more than a man. It can destroy momentum. So commanders start making decisions that are not just tactical, but emotional. Do they call for smoke to cover the crossing? Do they wait for a tank to provide heavy fire? Do they bring up their own sniper to hunt the hidden one? Everything slows down. A platoon that might have cleared the area in an hour now needs half a day. This is what made snipers so valuable. They multiplied the cost of every movement. The sniper's job wasn't always to kill many. Sometimes his job was to make the enemy pay in time, caution, and hesitation. Now, on the defensive side, that was exactly the point. If your army is outnumbered, you will eventually lose ground. But if your snipers can force the enemy to move cautiously, to spread out, to crawl when they want to run, you gain something extremely precious. You gain time. Time for reinforcements. Time for artillery to be brought up. Time for civilians to be evacuated. Time for new defensive lines to be prepared. One sniper can't stop an army, but he can slow its rhythm. He can turn a clean, sharp attack into a nervous, fragmented one. And when defenders see that happening, when they hear that our sniper held the line for 3 extra hours, or our sniper pinned down the enemy battalion in the factory district all afternoon, that becomes a story, not just a tactical report, a story of resistance. Different armies understood this in different ways, but many of them learned quickly that snipers were not just tools. They were useful characters for propaganda. Posters and newspaper articles would show the calm face of a sniper, often with a rifle in hand, eyes narrowed, gaze focused on the horizon. The message was always some version of, one person can still make a difference. In countries fighting defensive, desperate battles, this message was powerful. On the Eastern Front, for example, snipers became almost legendary figures. Urban ruins and long, static front lines created perfect conditions for them. Every shattered wall was a firing position. Every pile of bricks was cover. Every street was a potential shooting lane. Stories about individual snipers with high numbers of confirmed kills were circulated deliberately. Their names were mentioned on the radio. Their faces appeared in newspapers. Sometimes they were turned into living symbols of the nation's will to resist. It didn't even matter if every detail was accurate. What mattered was what they represented. Calm under pressure. Patience in chaos. The idea that the enemy could be hurt, punished, slowed, even when your own forces were exhausted. There is another layer to this symbolism that made it even more powerful. Many sniper stories had one particular twist. They were not just about men. World War II saw the rise of women snipers, especially on the Eastern Front. This shocked the enemy and inspired their own societies at the same time. From a propaganda perspective, it sent a loud message. If even our daughters are taking rifles and going to the front, then our commitment to this war is total. For the home front, these women became symbols of courage and equality in sacrifice. For the enemy, there was something uniquely unsettling about the idea that any shape in a window, any movement in the rubble, man or woman, could be the source of that invisible shot. Snipers blurred categories. Old ideas about who fights and who doesn't, who is dangerous and who is not, became less reliable. In a total war, the sniper became the face of that totality. But if you zoom in even closer, beyond propaganda posters and newspapers, there is a more intimate reason why snipers became symbols of hope for their own units. It's about the relationship between invisibility and trust. Most soldiers never meet their sniper properly. They might know his name. They might have seen her once at a forward position. They might have heard stories. But on a day-to-day level, it feels more like this. You go forward. Somewhere out there, ahead of you, someone is already watching through a scope, ready to take a shot at anyone who stands up to shoot you. That idea, even if imperfect, even if exaggerated, gives a strange kind of comfort. In a war where you often feel like a target, it helps to imagine that you also have a hunter on your side, that you are not just being looked at, you are also looking back. Of course, the truth behind the symbol was harder. Snipers themselves paid a heavy price. They carried the weight of knowing that the enemy wanted to kill them intensely. Counter-sniper hunts were ruthless. Once a sniper revealed his position, artillery might follow. Machine guns might sweep the area. Mortars might bracket the suspected location. Snipers lived with the knowledge that one mistake could erase everything. And yet, because they operated alone or in very small pairs, their emotional world was often invisible to others. To their suffering, the symbol added a strange pressure. You are not just a soldier. You are a story. You are expected to be calm, deadly, unbreakable. You are expected to be, in a way, more than human. This tension between the real sniper and the symbolic sniper is part of what makes them such interesting figures in World War II. On paper, they are just marksmen with better training and optics. In reality, they lived at the intersection of fear, hope, and myth. Every army wanted to use that myth. Some wanted the enemy to fear the sniper in the ruined building. Some wanted their own people to admire the sniper who never misses. Often, the same person became both things at once. Some of the strongest sniper symbolism of World War II was born in places where the landscape itself felt broken. Ruined cities, frozen forests, endless trenches carved into mud and snow. These were not just backgrounds, they were perfect hunting grounds. Take a city under siege or in the middle of a long battle. From the air, it looks like a grey wound. From the ground, it is a maze. Walls with holes, floors without roofs, staircases that lead to nowhere, streets filled with craters and burned out vehicles. For a regular infantryman, this environment is terrifying. You cannot see far. Every intersection is a risk. Every window might be watching you. For a sniper, this is opportunity. A broken window becomes a firing point. A collapsed wall becomes cover. A shadow in a stairwell becomes a place to disappear. The sniper studies lines of sight the way an artist studies light. He looks not at the building as a whole, but at one little rectangle of vision where someone is likely to appear. A doorway, a gap between two chimneys, the space above a low wall where a helmet might rise for a second. He can spend hours just watching those places, waiting for someone, somewhere, to forget for a moment that a sniper might be there. That's the technical side, but the symbolic side is more powerful, because in a city that looks dead, the sniper proves that the city is still fighting. To the attacking army, the ruins feel haunted. They take one house only to be shot at from the next. They send scouts forward, and a single shot cuts one of them down. They think an area is cleared. Then at dawn someone gets hit crossing the street. It feels as if the rubble itself is hostile to the defending side. This is exactly the story they want to tell. You may have destroyed our buildings, but you have not destroyed the eyes inside them. Now imagine a forest or a frozen field. Here, the sniper's world becomes flatter, but no less deadly. In snow, white camouflage and careful movement can make a human almost disappear. In forests, the sniper lives between trunks and branches, using shadows and undergrowth as tools. The symbolism in these environments is slightly different. In cities, snipers feel like ghosts in the ruins. In forests and snowfields, they feel like parts of the land. 4 soldiers advancing through deep snow. The idea that the forest is watching you can be deeply unsettling. A line of trees becomes more than trees. It becomes a boundary of vision. How many rifles are pointed at us from there? No one knows. Again, the sniper does not need to fire often. A few well-placed shots, spaced out over hours, can make an entire unit move as if the ground itself is hostile. And then there is the most intense and personal version of this invisible war. Sniper versus sniper. Most soldiers never know who exactly is shooting at them. The bullet arrives, and that is the end of it. But snipers sometimes know that somewhere out there, someone like them is waiting. Another pair of eyes behind another scope. Another patient mind, listening to the same silence, reading the same wind. When a sniper realizes that there is an enemy sniper hunting in the same sector, the battlefield becomes a game of mirrors. Each tries to read the other's habits. Where would I hide if I were him? What angle would I choose? Which building gives the best view of our crossing points? They look for clues. A flash of light that might be a lens. A piece of brick chipped away by a previous shot. A pattern in where and when the enemy fires. To regular soldiers, this might just look like someone out there shooting at us. To snipers, it feels like a duel that may last days. Sometimes, neither sniper ever sees the other clearly. They only know one thing for certain. At the end of this duel, one of them will go home. The other will be a story. These duels were perfect material for myth-making. They had all the elements: patience, intelligence, danger, and a clear winner and loser. Stories about legendary duels between snipers were told and retold, often simplified for newspapers and radio. They became part of the larger narrative of the war. Our sniper outwitted theirs. Our eyes were sharper. Our will was stronger. For the enemy, the same story flipped. Our sniper fell. The unseen hunter on the other side was better this time, even when exaggerated. These stories reinforced the idea that snipers lived in a separate layer of the war. A quieter, more personal layer. A layer where the conflict narrowed down from millions of soldiers and thousands of tanks to a single line of sight and one pull of a trigger. So by this point in the war, snipers had become more than just a tactical specialty. They were psychological weapons. They were propaganda icons. They were embodiments of how total and intimate the war had become. They represented 3 powerful ideas at once. The war sees you, even when you don't see it. One person still matters. Nowhere is truly safe. Fear and hope, wrapped into a single figure on a rooftop or in the snow. But behind all of that, the myth, the fear, the posters, there was still a human being with a rifle. When you strip away the posters, the news articles, the heroic stories and dramatic duels, you are left with one person lying in the dirt, in the rubble, in the snow, with a rifle and a long time to think. Being a sniper was not just a technical skill, it was a psychological burden. Most soldiers in World War II faced fear in loud ways. Explosions, charges, shouts, engines, orders screamed over gunfire. Snipers faced fear in silence, hours and hours of stillness, heartbeats so loud they felt like noise. The knowledge that somewhere, at some moment, the enemy might be looking for you with just as much patience as you were using to look for them. They lived in a world of what-ifs. What if my camouflage is not as good as I think? What if that twig I stepped on was heard? What if the flash of my scope was seen? What if the next shot I take is the one that finally gives me away? This constant awareness can be exhausting. The sniper is not only a hunter, he is a permanent target. Then there is the other part of the burden. Every shot is personal. In artillery, you may never see the faces of the men your shell hits. In bombing, you drop explosives on a distant city or factory, a blur of shapes far below. But through a sniper's scope, the target is close enough to see small details. A way of walking, a way of holding a weapon, sometimes even a facial expression. The sniper has time to decide. Is this the right target? Is this the right moment? Is it worth revealing my position for this one person? When the shot is fired, the sniper watches the effect directly. There is no distance, no abstraction, a fall, a twitch, a dropped object. For some, this created a heavy inner weight. They were not just firing at the enemy in some large, vague sense. They were making deliberate decisions about individual lives. And in a war where snipers were praised for high kill counts, some carried the quiet question, how many is too many to think about? The strange part is that the very traits that made someone a good sniper, patience, focus, self-control, the ability to stay still under stress, also made them more aware of the weight of what they were doing. They had time to think. They had time to remember faces. They had time to replay shots in their minds. Some learned to build emotional distance as a shield. They told themselves, if I don't shoot, he might shoot my friends later. Or, this is my job. I am a tool. I cannot afford to think about more than that. Others leaned on the symbol. They reminded themselves that they were not just individuals, but representatives of something larger, their unit, their city, their family, their country's survival. The symbol that inspired others also helped them survive their own thoughts. Yet the symbol could also become a cage. When a sniper was turned into a hero, in newspapers and radio, expectations followed. People wanted more stories, more numbers, more dramatic moments. The sniper became the sniper, a figure others imagined as confident, unbreakable, almost mechanical in precision. But the real person still felt cold, still made mistakes, still woke up from bad dreams. This gap between myth and reality is one of the reasons why the sniper symbol is so powerful. It shows how war needs stories to make sense of what it asks people to do. Snipers were easy to turn into stories. One rifle, one person, one number of kills, one city, one duel. Simple, memorable, sharply focused, just like their work. From the enemy's side, the symbol worked in the opposite direction. The sniper became not a hero, but a shadow. A name whispered with frustration. There's a sniper up there. That same one again. He got another officer. Sometimes whole units came to believe that they were being hunted by a single, almost superhuman enemy marksman, even when, in reality, several snipers were operating in rotation. The mind likes to compress fear into one figure. It's easier to think I am up against a terrifying sniper than to think danger is everywhere all the time. So fear, too, needed a character. And the sniper, invisible and selective, fit that character perfectly. This is how, over time, the sniper in World War II became a symbol on both sides of the front line. A symbol of precision and courage for those he protected, and a symbol of invisible death for those he hunted. Both sides were looking at the same person, the same rifle, the same hidden position, and seeing to opposite things: fear, hope, and somewhere, lying in the cold, trying not to move, trying not to blink too much, trying not to think too loudly, was the actual human being carrying both of those meanings at once. If you zoom all the way back out again, past the ruined cities, past the frozen forests, past the propaganda posters and legendary duels, World War II still looks like a war of huge machines and massive armies. But hidden inside that giant picture is the small, sharp outline of the sniper, a single figure with a rifle, who changed how others behaved. without ever having to show his face. Snipers became symbols of fear, because they proved that nowhere was truly safe. Not a trench, not a street, not a moment when you stopped to straighten your back or light a cigarette. They turned empty windows into threats. They turned the act of standing up into a small act of courage. Snipers became symbols of hope, because they proved that one person could still resist the weight of an enemy army. Even when your side was short on tanks, short on planes, short on everything, you could still have someone in the rubble, someone in the tree line, someone on the roof, who could slow the enemy down, cut down their leaders, and remind them that each step forward had a price. In that sense, snipers were mirrors. Whatever you brought to them, confidence, fear, desperation, determination, they reflected it back, magnified. To a strong attacking unit, they were an irritation that became an ease. To a tired defending unit, they were a thin line of sharpness, in a world that felt like it was breaking apart. The rifle was the same. The bullet was the same. The symbol depended on which side of the scope you lived on. Today, when people look back at World War II, snipers often appear in stories, films, and games as archetypes. The ghost in the ruins, the watcher in the snow, the quiet killer, the lone hero. Those images are powerful, but they are also incomplete. The real story is more complicated. Snipers were not just legendary figures. They were human beings under extreme pressure, used by their armies as tools, and by their nations as symbols. They walked a thin line, between visibility and invisibility, between pride and trauma, between being feared and being needed. And that is why, in World War II, the sniper became more than a role. He became a lens, a way to see how total war turns individual people into carriers of very large emotions. Fear, hope, hatred, courage, concentrated into a single, still silhouette. Behind a scope,